Let's do some fan questions.
Salam, what are your thoughts on Chael Sonnen, man?
Man, I'm kind of mad at Chael Sonnen because he hasn't been answering our questions recently. But anyways, Chael, we still have a question for you, and we are always be your favorite Pakistani medical students.
Isn't that right?
Now, the question is, what is Stephen A. Smith doing commentating on MMA? Don't you think Max Kellerman's better for that job?
Come on, guys. Peace out.
Oh, what's happening, fellas? You know what? You were wrong. I have not been avoiding your questions. They must just have not come through yet. But I will tell you this, Stephen A. has been doing a great job covering MMA, and he's doing a great job at expanding his repertoire as well. And, if Stephen A. is to get involved with your sport, the only thing that does is help your sport.
Werdum is coming back in a couple of months. I was wondering what you think of him being matched up against the boa constrictor, Alexei Olynyk. Possible date for this matchup could be the UFC 250 card that's going to be in Sao Paulo. But I was thinking I'd rather see them go at it for 5 rounds to see what happens then. So perhaps main eventing a fight night would be better. What are your thoughts?
I like that match. Werdum called him out. Werdum called Olynyk out after Olynyk's last victory, and Werdum said, my jiu-jitsu's better. Okay. I really think that's a pretty good matchup. And, as Werdum starts to get back in there, Verdum's in one of these tough spots where he's so good and he's so dangerous. You can't give him a low guy. He's not going to walk in and get a number 15 guy. He's always going to be in there with top 10 guys. It's the only responsible way you got to put a good fighter in there with Werdum, or you're going to get him hurt. But Verdum's in this other situation where he's been out for a little bit. And to try to come back and shake some of that, what you call it, ring rust or whatever you want to, but he's got to learn a little bit. You got to get a little bit of experience. You got to get a couple of minutes in there. And it does seem like Olynyk, if for nothing else, would come in and probably be a little bit grappling heavy. And I think that could be helpful. I think that could be very wise for Werdum to have somebody that wants to grab a hold of him instead of stand in front of him more in your first time back. I think that match makes sense. I think it's a hard call out for Werdum just because there is something to be said for momentum. And Olynyk definitely has momentum. But to your question, I'm into the match.
Hey Chael, Ahmed from Michigan. Do you think if Tony Ferguson is victorious in his bout with Khabib Nurmagomedov, that his first title defense would be Conor and not an immediate rematch with Khabib due to the fact that how big of a draw Conor is?
What a mess that would be. And I love to think that through the same way as you're saying, but that would really change the landscape in a hurry. I mean, all your pieces come off the board if that happens. And Tony has a very good shot of beating Khabib. That's not only according to Tony, that's according to Khabib. I mean, this is a hard fight. So let's work that through real fast. See, I like the idea of having a round robin. I like the idea of having Tony, Khabib, Conor, and maybe they trade it all back and forth and sideways, right? Maybe Tony comes in and gets the jump on Khabib. Conor comes in and gets over on Tony. Khabib goes back to Conor. You understand the pieces there, but it would certainly change things fast. If the goal is to get Conor and Khabib together and have them get together for the title, you're going to have a big problem. If Tony goes in and grabs the belt, what do you do then? And I don't think anybody's going to complain if all of a sudden, okay, it's not going to be Khabib and Conor, it's going to be Tony versus Conor. Amazing. Sounds fun, but now it sounds different. It's not the same thing. And are we going to put this in Saudi Arabia? Are we going to hold this fight in Moscow? Well, all of a sudden you don't have to worry about those things anymore, right? Tony's from California. Tony's got the title. Looks like we're not going to Moscow. So I think that it'd be very interesting what would happen there, but it would also be hard to predict. It is. I mean, you got to see, is it going to be a controversial match? Is it going to be a close match? Is it going to call for an immediate rematch? We just saw this with Stipe and Daniel Cormier. We just saw this. The biggest fight that anybody could make would have been John Jones versus Daniel Cormier. That was the one. It was being discussed. What weight class are we going to do it? Is John moving up to heavyweight? I mean, this thing was all but done. That will never happen and is never even discussed again. As soon as Stipe beat DC, particularly in the dramatic fashion, losing the first round, coming back, all those body shots in the fourth, it was this very dramatic match where, okay, that fight told a story. And we don't have a story yet for a rematch for Tony and Khabib because we don't have the match yet. But I say if that fight goes out and it tells a story that's dramatic and all of a sudden we start to see these pieces, yes, you could very possibly just go in and look to do a rematch.
Hey, what's up, Chael? This is Amin from Montreal. I just got ticket for Tony versus Khabib fight. I'm super, super excited. And my question is, we've never seen Khabib getting cut during a fight. And we know that Tony Ferguson likes to use a lot of elbows. So my question is, how do you think will Khabib react if he gets cut during this fight? And how do you think it will affect him? Thank you.
A lot has been made of that. I got to tell you, a lot has been made of the fact that Tony Ferguson likes to cut and slice people and how good he is with those elbows. That even if Khabib takes him down and gets that top control, like we've seen Khabib do in so many fights, that's where Tony then goes to work with the elbows, which I think all of this is true. I just don't know that I would buy in to any level of narrative that was to make believe that Khabib all of a sudden goes into panic mode. Khabib sees his own blood and all of a sudden goes into panic mode. And that seems to be a lot of what I'm hearing. And I don't know if that's how you were asking the question. Maybe that's just how I'm interpreting your question. But I think that would be very naive of us if we have no evidence whatsoever that a cut is going to bother Khabib, but therefore we've decided to add into the story, should Khabib get cut, it's going to bother him and he's going to unfold. I don't know about all that. I don't know if I'm buying that. However, the strikes that would have to land to cut Khabib, which are going to be Tony's elbows, those in of himself could end up being the problem, not the blood. I mean, those are a big deal, the way Tony does it. And some guys just have elbows like that. They're just very sharp. Anderson Silva had that. Very sharp, right? He was long and he was skinny, so everything was very pointed. Tony's one of those guys where it's a real weapon. A little bit different the way he does it. And it's going to cause you some pain, some swelling, some numbing. Yes, it could also cause some blood. But I think that the pain and numbing and swelling would have more of an effect on Khabib's mindset and the rest of the bout than the blood.
Hey, Chael, this is John from New Jersey with my little daughter Audrey here. Say, what's up, Audrey? Anyway, my question is about DC and Stipe. Stipe's coach was recently on the interview, and he said that he would want to fight someone that isn't DC. He wants new blood, maybe possibly a rematch with Ngannou. Do you think it'd be wrong for Stipe and his camp to deny DC the rematch that he gave to him a year ago? Do you think it'd be wrong? How do you feel about Stipe fighting somebody else that's not DC and, you know, making DC wait around and get older for that trilogy fight? Tell me how you feel about it, man. I think it'd be kind of wrong with Stipe to do that. Anyway, I love the show. Say bye, Audrey. Bye. Bye, Uncle Chael.
I can tell you with a very high degree of confidence that Stipe's next fight is going to be with Daniel Cormier for the heavyweight championship. I can also tell you that if we look at the history of these two, don't forget the night Daniel comes in and stops Stipe, takes his championship. They usher Stipe to the back and they bring Brock Lesnar in and tried to make that fight. Now, nobody was wrong there. And Daniel Cormier was not wrong for wanting this big mega match with Brock at all. But he still did it. I mean, Daniel did still go down that road and keep Stipe at an arm's reach. And Stipe was working so hard trying to get that rematch. I mean, everything short of begging. He was out there pleading his case. He got it. Turned out Stipe was right. What I'm sharing that for is now Stipe's doing that back to him. I think that this is fair play. Yeah, I think that Stipe goes in there and fights Daniel next. And I also think Stipe is going to make Daniel sweat and worry and wonder about what he's going to do. It seems like he's just returning the favor.
Hey, Uncle Chael. I want to ask you a question about the great Cael Sanderson. I watch a lot of videos on that guy, and I was wondering what your thought would be on him in MMA. The guy was dominant force in wrestling, and I still think he's the best amateur wrestler, or whatever you want to call him, that ever did it. So if I could just hear about that, and if you have an amazing Cael Sanderson story, love to hear it. Thanks.
Oh, I think we'd all have to assume that Cael would have cleaned house. He would have come in and just done a great job. You know, above everything else, he's a great competitor. It could be collegiate or freestyle, in any way you want to do it, but you bring in another guy, you shake hands, you set up a time constraint, you set up some rules, he knows how to win. He knows how to get his hand raised. So yeah, I think that would have translated to MMA, and a lot of people thought he was going to do that. I know he spent some time in MMA rooms. He'd go in, he'd help with their grappling class, or he'd be in town, recruiting somewhere, and somebody would ask him to come in. And so he spent some time. I don't know that he ever sparred. I've never heard a story like that. Like, Cael came in and sparred today. I've never heard that. But I would have to think that you're right. I mean, this was just one dominant, big, strong, aggressive, understood, new controls, new positioning, tough. Everything that you would think would be a helpful component to MMA. Yeah. Sanderson checks all those boxes.
Hey, Chael, one of your Armenian fans here, Ryan from Connecticut. Just curious as to what your thoughts are on the upcoming Edmund Shahbazyan fight versus Derek Brunson. Your thoughts and predictions on that fight, and also about Edmund Shahbazyan's future, possibly becoming the youngest UFC champion. Is he on the right track? And what your dislikes and likes are about his fighting so far. Thank you. Go Armenia.
Oh, Edmund is nasty. I love watching him fight. I love where his skills are at. One thing that he did in his last fight, and it turned my head a lot, was not only did he know where his opponent was, but he also knew his pacing. And to see that, particularly in such a young man, is surprising in many ways. But he knew when to put his foot down on the pedal. He knew when to catch his breaths in there. I like the story that he could go on to be the youngest champion ever. I think that there's something that's very marketable about that. Not to mention he's undefeated. Not to mention he's a lot of fun to watch. Now, Derek Brunson is a step up in competition. Derek Brunson is nobody's fool. And on just the right night, Derek Brunson's going to get the jump on anybody out there. So Edmund is going to be tested here. He's going to have to burn some calories. It's a match that division needs to happen. It's a forming division in many ways right now. There's a lot of pieces that are moving around 185. We just had two champions in Rockhold and Weidman leave the division. Had a perennial top contender in Jacare leave the division, but now I think he's headed back down. I'm just saying it's a little bit of a weird division. And Edmund matters. And the outcome of this match is going to be relevant.
What's up, Uncle Chael? It's your boy, Baby, and I wanted to ask you two questions. Question number one, what did you eat for breakfast this morning? Question number two, what is the best discipline to transition into MMA? Would it be a boxer, a wrestler, a taekwondo guy? I don't know. What do you think?
I did not have breakfast today. I don't really eat breakfast. Almost never. Almost never, ever. First off, I don't really like it. I don't like breakfast foods that much. Not that into eggs. I don't dislike them, but I'm not super into them. And I usually don't eat my first meal till about 3 in the afternoon. So I will tell you this. Got a Super Bowl party to go to. My wife had 10 pounds of wings. I heard her order some pizzas. I know there was something about sushi getting delivered. So I'm definitely going to get my calories in, but it wasn't in breakfast. And as far as the best style to transition, I would encourage something grappling based. And I would only encourage that because if somebody's looking to start and haven't done an art before, grappling would be less traumatic than if you wanted to walk in your first day, throw some headgear on, jump in a ring, and you start, boxing or kickboxing or something along these lines. Grappling's a little more push and pull. You can get your heart rate up, but you can also start to learn what you're doing. Start to learn pacing and positions, and you can do it without taking the shots.
Hey Chael, this is Pete. I'm a fan of yours and I'm from Berlin. And I have a question regarding the Tony Ferguson versus Khabib fight. Since this has been the 5th time this fight has been announced, I don't think we're going to get a 6th try. However, what do you think would happen if the champ Khabib pulls out? Because since he's the champ and Ramadan is right around the corner, if I'm not mistaken, in April, I'd assume the UFC would have to strip him. What do you think?
Oh, that'd be a mess, wouldn't it? That would be a very big mess, and I suppose some of it would come down to what was the reason. What was the reason? What happened? Was this an injury? Was this an illness? Exactly what happened, and when do you think that he's going to return? Yeah, I suppose if that happened closer to the fight week, all of a sudden he pulls out for some reason. I don't know that they would strip him, but it would seem as though perhaps that would be an extra motivating factor to keep Tony on the card, bring in whoever that opponent's going to be. Gaethje, I think, is offered to do this. Conor has spoke about doing this. And do an interim match. Could be something like that. Then Conor might say, I'll do it, but no interim. Strip him completely. I mean, who knows? That would be a really big mess. And let's hope that doesn't happen.
Hey, what's up, Chael? This is Eli Knight from Missouri. I was wondering, what do you think would happen if Yoel Romero went up to 205? Because I know he makes a huge cut down to 185. Do you think he could be as successful at 205, or do you think 185 is his perfect weight class? Let me know.
Well, Yoel's been competing at 185 his whole career. When he was an amateur wrestler, for example, when he represented Cuba at the World Championships and the Olympic Games, he did it at 185 pounds. So one of those guys. And I've always wanted to see him at 205. I always thought he was the right size, but he also had an explosiveness. He also matches up very interestingly with John Jones. Now, this story would be a little bit more relevant 5 and 6 years ago when Yoel started to kind of make his run through the sport. But at that time, I always thought, that guy, Romero, should be doing this at light heavyweight, but he wants to be 185, and I don't know why he puts his body through that. I mean, he has a really hard time making it. It cost him a world championship. If you'll remember that, he fought Rockhold. That was for the interim world championship. He won that fight. But because he missed weight by 0.2 of a pound, the belt was no longer on the line. So it quite literally cost him a world championship. And I do agree with you. I have always wanted to see him at light heavyweight.